Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Avec Canada podcast. I am your host, Owen Osinde. Today, we're joined by Jochebed Essel, who's the founder and the CEO of Everyday Joy Studio. Today, we're going to be discussing how she left her job to pursue her dream of opening up her own space and creating a marketplace online and all that good stuff. And lastly, we also want to thank our sponsor, BDC, for making this podcast a reality. We could not do it without you. You're in for a treat with this episode, so stay tuned in and let's get to it. All right, welcome back, everybody. We are back on the Other Canada podcast, and today we have a great guest in the building. We're actually in her space, and we are in the Everyday Joy Studio.
Yes, yeah.
Jochebed Essel.
Ooh, sounds so professional.
Extremely professional. That's how we do it in here at the Everyday Studio, right?
Love it.
How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm doing well. How are you?
As I always say, I'm blessed and highly favored.
Oh, I like that.
You know, sometimes you don't want to say, I'm good, whatever. It's just, everybody says that.
Yeah.
So you want to be very, you want to be introspective and just say, you know what? I'm blessed.
All right. So I'm taking some nuggets from you today.
Take some nuggets from me and I'll take some nuggets from you.
Okay.
How about
I like that?
You like that?
Yes.
So I know you own this studio. It's a beautiful spot.
Thank you.
It's very elegant. But I know your background didn't start as an interior design first. You were actually studying health sciences, then you transitioned into this. Right?
So they do their research on this podcast. Yeah.
Hey, that's how we do it. We're pros.
Yes. Yeah. I did start with interior. Well, not with interior design, but I started with health science. I think I am African. I'm from Ghana, for everyone that knows or doesn't know. But if you have a African parent, and I will generalize that and say an African parent, you really only have a few career options. And so I was very bright when I was younger, and my parents recognized that. Yes. And so I really only had one option when I was growing up, and it was to be a doctor.
Yeah, doctor.
Yes, you said it with the accent there. Yes.
Of course.
Yeah, and for a long time, I think I had to think a lot about the reasons why I wanted to do it and why I stopped, essentially. And part of me being really introspective was realizing that it wasn't necessarily the career path, but I think it was all of the accolades or all of the praise or all of the acceptance that came from saying that, like, hey, I'm going to university and I'm going to study medicine. Yes. I'm going to university and my goal is to be a doctor. Like, I truly enjoyed people lighting up
giving
when
you,
they
like,
heard
the praise, right? And
right?
it's a little prestige too.
Very.
And your parents too, like, they take pride in talking to other people and say, you know what, my doctor is studying da-da-da. She has a PhD or he has a PhD, he has his master's, you know.
100%.
Every function just
100%.
feels like it's just like they're putting out their chest amongst other parents. It's like you're their prized possession. It's not even what you think is the best thing for you. It's like what they think is going to look good amongst other people.
Oh, yeah. And I know that for a lot of African and Black kids in general, I will say that, or maybe a lot of people of color, this feels like it's everyone's story when they say, like, my parents wanted me to do this. Yeah. But it really is a lot of our stories too, because I think, for example, with my father, he studied and he was a professor in Ghana, right? And he came and he went to Germany first, and then he came to Canada, and he essentially brought his entire family over. But for him, when he got here, they didn't accept his profession and the degrees that he had gotten prior to.
Happens to, like, every immigrant.
Right, happens to every immigrant. Yeah. And they were like, oh, you got to go back to school again. I talked to him a lot about this, and I'm like, why didn't you just go back to school? But I think it was very prideful for him, where he was just like, why should I? And so I think when they come here now and they have children, for them, it's like, you have to do everything that we didn't do, right? You have to have that exact experience that we wanted to have. And so I felt like, for me personally, I held a lot of, like,
responsibility.
Yeah. And, like, my older sister was very free-spirited. I'm gonna do whatever I want to do. My older brother was an older brother, so I was like, as number 3, I had all the pressure. And so I very much was like, yes, I'm going to do that. I'm going to take it on. And I also was just excited that people were excited that I was going to be somebody great. And so that too as well, that duality kind of plays against you a little bit. And that's kind of where I started. And
from what it sounds like, it seems like you were their last hope in terms of, like, everything is banging. Okay, we have these two others. They haven't really panned out. So they're looking at you like, listen, if you mess up, then it's like a failure because if they couldn't get what they could have gotten, and now they're looking at you, they need at least one.
Yeah.
One out of three.
Yeah. One out of the three to have one of those professions. And I apologize in advance to my two older siblings because this in no way is dimming your lights. You guys are awesome. But
absolutely,
I think, in terms of the type of typical career that they're looking for, I had a lot of pressure on me, a lot of pressure. Even my earliest memory of me and my dad, I was maybe 3, almost 4. I had this little red stool and this little table that he used to sit me down beside and sit beside me and teach me to read. Literally and he would be reading. It wasn't just like, oh, A is for apple. Like these were like really tough books, right? And so
you're being molded
from very, very young. And so for me, it was again highlighting that fact that like if I'm successful in this, then I'll be appreciated. Then I'll have value too as well.
So you got a job after you graduate, right? And you're working at a retailer.
Yeah.
Which retailer was that?
Yeah. I don't think I've ever mentioned them before, but I worked for Urban Barn.
Urban Barn.
Yeah.
That's some really nice stuff.
They have some really great stuff, actually. So I graduated university. This is me being 22. My dad immediately hounding me because I haven't yet taken my MCATs. And for anyone who knows, like if you're going into medicine, you are taking your MCATs at 20, you're taking it at 21. Like you're not waiting until you graduate university, right? So hadn't taken it yet. I had already knew at this point I was no longer going into medicine. But I think when you have someone who is, I'm a high performing person that no longer had any motivation or direction. Like I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I don't want to do this. And I thought, I think I want to do something more creative and like have a bit of that creative pursuit. Yeah. But I literally was like, okay, I had nothing. I knew that I'm like, okay, if I work hard at something else, I can distract them.
You can still like achieve something.
Right. I can pretend. I can be like, okay, like I'm just doing this right now. I'm taking a break. I just finished university, Dad. Give me a second.
You're buying time.
Right. I was buying time. Yeah. And so I graduated and I was looking for a job and I found Urban Barn as a retailer. It was so funny because I thought they were in clothing, like, Urban Planet, Urban Behavior. Exactly. I get it and I don't know what the job is about at all. And I, pardon my French, but I BS'd my way a little bit through the interview, but good under pressure. So it was great. I went in for a part-time role there. They had offered me an assistant manager position and I was like, oh. But again, I feel like a lot of lessons along the way because at that point in time, I didn't understand my value or anything that I brought to the table. So I turned around and I denied the assistant manager job and I just said, I'm going to work part-time. I'll just work part-time. I still wanted to travel. I didn't want anything tying me down. So I was like,
you want to be a free spirit.
I wanted to be a free spirit.
Exactly.
But there's like half of a free spirit in here. I'm very also like, but I was trying to deny that side of myself. So I was just like, yeah, I'm going to work part-time. Yeah. I worked my butt off and I ended up getting to their visual merchandising manager for Ontario East. So in that role, we helped design the store layouts too as well. We design the way that the stores look and the effect of the stores. We train and we manage our managers. So each store location would have a manager and we're managing that on the design side. Yeah. So it's really exciting. You get to travel too as well. Your hands are always in new product and you're working with a lot of players in our corporate environment. So for the time that it was very exciting to have worked and had that level of experience. Yeah. Working on all levels of management for Urban Barn. So.
Yeah, and from what it sounds like, you climbed up the ranks really quick.
I did.
What do you think you had that other people didn't have that made you elevate so quickly?
Honestly, I think when I think about it, it was an experience that happened at work that motivated me and put like a little bit of drive in me too as well. I think I've always been a person who goes after for whatever it is that they want. But in that situation, I had applied for a specific role in the company and I kid you not, I worked so hard. I did everything that they asked me to. You know, we were opening new store locations. I traveled, opened the new store locations, did everything, and I didn't get the job at the end of it. And there was like this level of injustice that I felt. I was like, oh my goodness, like
I did all this, and how dare you not give me this?
Exactly.
Like, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Lesson number 2 on not understanding my own value as an individual. But I sat there and I couldn't fathom why, right? And I had a conversation with someone, and I realized that I wasn't showing up in the room. I thought that, like, if I just worked hard enough, people would notice me. All I had to do was be the first one there, the last one to leave, and, like, someone's going to notice how hard you're working. And I think that relative to the overall picture, yes, that is true. You do need to work really, really hard, but you also need to understand where it is that you want to go. You also need to understand who it is that you need to speak to get to where you want to go. And I had none of those skills. I'm not the first person that's going to let somebody know, like, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm working on. I'm so excited. I had none of those skills prior to. But after that, I sat there and I realized, I'm like, okay, if this is exactly what I want, then I'm going to work towards that. And so I started sending emails, and I think everyone was shocked in the company, like, oh my God, Josh is ready. And then I got a mentor within the company and was like, okay, we're going to guide you to get you to where you want to go. And so I knew that I had a goal now in mind, and I could perform and meet that goal. And I performed, and I kept meeting that goal. And every 6 months, I felt like I was in a new role in the company, and it became that. I was, for a season, sometimes you do have to be that yes person. Do you want to do this? Yes. And then keep moving forward. And so that's where it landed me in the position that I was in. And now I'm here, right?
So at the peak of it, right before transition to everyday, what role were you at?
At the peak of it, so the last role that I was at was the visual merchandising manager. And outside of that, within the visual department, there's only one step higher, and that would be to manage all of the visual merchandisers. And so at the peak of it, I was at the point of my career at that company that I had wanted to be at.
And what was the catalyst that made you depart from the role?
Yeah. I think I got there and I wasn't happy.
You had it all. You've been working for it, and it just didn't click for you.
Everything that I wanted. And I realized that I was like, I love visual, but I don't just love visual. I started having ideas for, like, the marketing team. I started having ideas for, like, operations. Started having ideas for all of these different facets of the business that had nothing to do with what I was doing. And I wanted to do them. And I wanted to do them more than I just wanted to do visual. And I was talking to someone in the company, and I was like, there was no lateral movement for visual. Again, when you think about visual in terms of, like, a corporate structure, there's no real analysis for measuring growth in any way. So I would sit there with my managers, and we would plan about how we could expand in their operations, or how I can, like, build more of their customers, or how do we generate more value per square footage in all of their stores. And all of that is great, and it really doesn't have anything to do with my job, but those were the things that were making me happy. And I realized that I was like, I have more to offer, and I want to provide more. I think when I thought about the catalyst that really pushed me forward, it was Black Lives Matter. And, you know, it's very dear to me, and I think about my experience that I had. Unfortunately, we work for organizations all the time where, you know, the individuals that work in those organizations can sometimes have biases. The customers that you experience in those organizations sometimes have biases too as well. And I was just angry all the time.
Yes.
Right? Like, you come home and you're on social media, and it's anything and everything that you can see. And I was just mad all the time, and I had nowhere to direct that to. And I'd have to come to work every day,
channel it in, and be that. What's a code switching?
Yeah.
We're code switching a lot, right?
Automatically.
Yeah.
And, like, it's like no one understands, except for people that look like you, how much of a toll that takes on you as an individual and who you are, right? The fact that I have to say that I have to come into work and pretend to be somebody that I'm not is crazy.
It's ludicrous.
Right?
Yeah.
We spend so much time at our jobs and we decide the careers that we choose, and we should be able to show up as ourselves. And
Absolutely.
I wasn't able to do that. And I was like, I got to a point where I'm like, I'm just going to say something because something happened and it was crazy that nobody was talking about it at work. And I was like, if I get fired tomorrow,
so be it.
so be it.
Yeah.
And I said something, and I remember, and you guys, when I talk a lot. So I wrote like 6 pages of all of the things that I was feeling. And I just was like, I'm just going to send it in. I was like, hey. And I think people started to listen and people started to hear me. But I think there's also this secondary thing that happens too, where it's like, okay, you have people's attention, right?
Yes.
Like you can have an attention in an organization, but if there's no real action for change or movement, or people aren't really ready and willing to truly understand how they can dismantle some of the things that they've actively or unactively or inactively, I should say, participate into a culture that it creates, then it's hard to really have any change done.
Yeah.
And I really felt like, and this is just my personal experience, but I really felt like I was token at that company. And so my wheels started turning on like, how do I change this industry as a whole? Because this has been my experience. This is something that I'm seeing, you know, the black dollar is so, it's highly valued as us being consumers of products, right? But when it comes to us being directly marketed to, us being catered to, us being honored in for our value that we provide a lot of these organizations, right? We're not recognized. They don't see that.
They don't see that.
They don't see that. You could spend millions of dollars at an organization and they will tell you we are not their target demographic. You know what I mean? And so for me, I was like, in this space that we all find ourselves spending so much time in, which is our homes, right? We all want to have beautiful spaces.
Absolutely.
We all want to feel joy when we're at home. And I was like, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, but we're never part of the conversation. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And so my wheels started turning a little bit, but I'm like the most reluctant entrepreneur that there is. So I was just like, okay, I had to think about it a lot. And then I was sitting there and I was like, this is a ginormous beast. And there's just like, there's no way.
Ideas to start flowing and you just had to act on something.
You know?
Yeah.
And then at that point, once my mind gets stuck on something, I can't get out of it. And so then I was like, okay, if I was really going to do this, like how would I be able to do it? And luck turned out that things worked out for me. Then I ended up leaving my company at 5 p.m., October 15th, 2021. It's very emotional for me. But at the same time, it was very, very exciting.
It was relief.
It was relief. Like I could take like a big breath because I could be like, okay, I can now create spaces and environments where I truly feel the support, and I truly feel that this was made for us by us. You know, I truly feel like I can touch a part of the market that hasn't been captured before, and so that was what I ran with, and I was like, okay, let's just do it. Let's try.
And you know, like also you're talking about the black dollar. There's actually, I gotta send you a TikTok actually, which shows like this man breaking down how much value we bring to the marketplace, and it's in the trillions.
It's insane.
And this was going on through like the whole Kyrie Irving thing when Nike was dropping him, and he was showing us, you know what? If we just stopped spending money on Nike or these other brands that we spend on, their stock will crash. Right? So it just shows us how much power we have as a community, but we don't really realize it because we're just always the ones who are the consumers. We're the ones who are participating in these platforms, bringing up their value, but we actually, we're not creating our own products and these different platforms, right? So I think it's just like shifting that narrative and actually starting to educate like the kids from young, like, hey, be an owner, be a creator, be a producer, just don't be a consumer. And which is like a big conversation we need to have within the community. Everyday studio now. So we're in the space now. It's beautiful. It seems like for 1 year, you've gone so far. What really helped expedite that process?
Wow, that's a really good question, actually. I think I think it's undervalued and underlooked, but I think a lot comes from having drive and motivation. Mm-hmm. I think when you are in a position of lack, you now can be like, okay, I can either do this and it work out for me, mm-hmm. or I can sit now and comb through Indeed and try to find another job. Yeah. And for me, I opened the studio and okay, let me take it back a little bit actually for you guys. But when I first left my job, I now through with Futurepreneur, which was an amazing platform too as well that helped mm-hmm. me get a loan. I was like, okay, I have something, but I don't have enough. And I think we can all attest to the fact that if you want to build a large organization, you need capital to do that.
Scared
right?
money never
mm-hmm,
made money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
And so I was like, I need to either go viral mm-hmm. or I need to think more strategically on how I was actually going to make this happen. And so for me, I was like, how can I provide an experience for who I know I want my customers to be? How can I display my home essentials in a way that's captivating, in a way that speaks to our design aesthetic, in a way that people can understand when they see that image, but then also generate revenue, also build relationships within the industry, also connect with other creators that I could leverage for gifting opportunities with the business too as well. And it all kind of came in line with opening a studio. And I was like, I had used studios in the past, and I feel like I was very naive through this process because I had no industry connects or contacts.
But once you say that's like your advantage, right? Because I think when you have experience, it can cloud your judgment into actually blocking new creativity.
Yeah.
So I think like that's actually an asset you had.
100%. Because I was like, all you have to do is open, and like
and people will come.
Oh my God, that was like my whole thing. People were like, yeah, and I had strategies for sure, but I think nothing prepares you for the real thing, right? So I was like, yeah, like people will come, just build it. That's what you hear all the time, right? And nobody tells you the little things they did behind the scenes to really get it moving. And so I did that, and I was immediately scared. The first day that I opened, I was immediately scared because I was like, what if nobody comes?
Anxiety must have been crazy.
My anxiety was through the roof.
Like, how were you sleeping during that time?
I was not.
You're sleeping and sweating at the same time.
Oh my God, I'll tell you a story. I was doing a lot of the work myself inside the studio, right? Yeah. Because, you're an entrepreneur, you want to do it all, you want to cut savings as much as you can. And I remember I had to, one of my photographer friends was going to take photos of the space for me. And I was here at 4 a.m. in the morning. And it was nowhere near being ready, but it was a timeline that only I set for myself. Mm-hmm. And I was here and I was crying. Yes, entrepreneurs, we shed real tears sometimes, but I was crying and I was like overwhelmed because I set these unrealistic goals and expectations for myself. And I didn't realize that you do have the power to make adjustments and adjust. I called her and I was like, I'm not ready. And she was like, it's okay. We can reschedule, we can reset. And I think for me, again, another lesson that I learned is even in that small moment, and it took a few more opportunities after that, but nothing happens for you unless you ask, right? If you don't put it out there, if you don't ask someone, if you don't turn around and say, hey, this is what I can offer in exchange for this, or I don't have this yet, but are you willing to do this or this opportunity? That nothing moves from that. And so from then I kind of pivoted my strategy a little bit. I reached out to as many photographers I knew of or could. I leveraged space time for exposure. I reached out to a bunch of different creators and I built the network that way. And then it just became an organic growth from word of mouth. And I think to grow with word of mouth, you need to have two things. Like you need customer service. I'm going to say that again because I don't think a lot of people understand that you need customer service.
You need it.
Yeah. You need it.
You can't skip it.
You cannot skip it. Yeah. It is the number one thing. And you have to have this unrelenting desire to win. I think those are my two things that I would say, and that's for me. Like it's customer service, and like it's a non-negotiable that you need to know that I'm gonna win at this. Because when you don't have those two things, one, word of mouth won't spread like the wildfire that it will for you, because people are scared to trust a new brand, right? And whether it's on the product side, and I can attest to both, right? Whether it's on the product side or whether it's an in-person service-based company, that people are experiencing you as a founder or the entrepreneur or whatever title you would like to give yourself, people go for things that they trust, right? Like if I don't connect with you, I'm not going to choose your service. I might go with B.
Someone else, exactly.
I might go with somebody else. And we have to understand that sometimes in the beginning, you're serving your customer first, and then in turn, they're going to give you back, whether that's a monetary value, whether that's an exchange of
even like a referral
services,
too.
whether that's a referral, right? Those things happen organically through that. Oh my God, she just had this amazing energy. I loved it.
Yeah.
Or, oh my God, like I didn't think that she was going to do that. And she was like, yeah, I'm going to do that for you guys, or this is great. And sometimes I feel like we get in this position or this point where we say, oh, I've already paid my dues. Like they just have to
come to me.
They just have to come to me now, or I'm not going to do that. Like this Nike's not doing that, so why should I do that? But it's those small instances in the beginning that really, really give you leverage, that really start to give you that momentum and that push. And when you are the person that's like, I want to win, you're going to do what it takes to win.
Yeah, they always say like success is, it's rented, right? You don't own it.
Yeah.
And the payment's made every single day. Like a moment you don't make your payment, you're not going to get success, right? So it's like that player or athlete who thinks just because they've reached the peak of their game, they don't got to train. They don't got to show up to practice. They don't got to read their plays, right? And you start seeing it in their performance. Like, it starts creeping in people's attitude. I don't see the same fire anymore, right? Because now you're feeling like you're fed, like I'm good, right?
Exactly.
And as an entrepreneur, you can't have that attitude because there's competition every day. Mark Cuban said, business is the greatest sport ever because it's 365, 24/7, and there's someone around the world trying to kick your ass every single day.
Every day.
And if you take your foot off the pedal, someone's coming to eat your lunch.
Oh, 100%. 100%. There's so many, there's a lot of different studios in Toronto. And you have to sit to yourself and be like, how am I going to differentiate? And sometimes it's not like, oh yeah, I'm differentiated because we have the prettiest space. Okay. People don't always go somewhere just because it's pretty, right? Yeah. It's vain, it's vanity, it fades. But sometimes the differentiating factor can literally just be like, when I walk in there, I have the best experience. From the beginning to the end, it's easy. Everything that I thought of or I needed is provided for me, and you keep building from there. I have never ever said no to anybody when they've asked me for something that's reasonable. I've been like, yeah, we can make that happen. Yeah, I can do that. Yes, we can do that. And I go and I make it happen. And it's because I understand that the value is not for today. The value is for 6 months from now or a year from now. Or you turn around and you've found yourself that you've had this opportunity and you don't even know where it came from.
Exactly.
Right? So I think for me, I never said no to the right things, though. I don't want to confuse that and make people feel like they just have to say yes to everything. But don't say no to the right things just because you might not think that you are ready or you don't have the confidence to do that, because it turns around that you can actually provide a lot of interest or value to someone.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, for the sake of time here, there's a couple of things I want to touch upon.
Yeah, no,
right?
Totally.
You're offering your service here as like a studio, and you also have like a website where you do sell home decor. So I want to get to that part of it because it's very unique to see studios doing that.
Yeah.
What made you decide to actually have that as an offering, part of like every day?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I would say I didn't start off that way in wanting to have the studio and have the online business too as well. But as a way that I wanted to propel the online business was where the studio was like birthed from. Yeah. For me, it made a lot of sense. It made a lot of marketing sense for me too as well. People use the space every day, and every day there is a highlight of a product that's in that, right? And so using that strategically, you're getting your name out there. Strategically too as well, people are touching and they're feeling and they're experiencing the product, and I'm collecting a lot of data just by the people coming into the space too as well. I'm like, okay, people are responding to the way that this place looks. Okay, that's great. It means that we're moving in the right direction. It means that this is something that's of interest to people. People are now providing feedback too as well. I love this. I love that. I haven't yet done a service of like design help at all, but it is something now that people request all the time. And now that I've known, like I've generated that interest too as well, I can confidently move into a direction like that if I so choose to, and know that I would have an audience there that's ready to receive it too. So this place has been really great for the online business because I can test a lot in here. I can see what works. I can see what's not working. And the home industry is huge. And so for me, starting with like home essentials, like my goal is to expand into furniture myself. But until then, it's also a really great way to build partnerships with other furniture brands too.
Yeah, I think that's a great strategy because the more you, let's say you market towards like the GTA area, you can still use those emails and market to those emails and let them come down to the space to use it, right?
Exactly.
Do you also design the products yourself, or do you just source them from like different people?
So a little bit of both. All of like the textiles that we sell, for the most part, they're handcrafted. So we'll do the design on the material, and then they're sewn in-house too. And then the other product, we source them locally. And so just trying to minimize my supply chain as much as I can right now. Just, you know, I know we've recovered a bit from the pandemic, but it is still insane. And so I'm really trying to keep the supply chain as close to Canada or local to Ontario as much as I can.
Certainly. And as we work towards wrapping up, you've been in business now for like a year.
Yeah.
What's been like your bigiest win so far? And what's one L you've had to endure that you're still recovering from?
Okay. I think I would say my biggest win by far, I think this is the moment where I finally felt like I was validated, if that makes sense, was in August. It was very random. A editor reached out to me and was like, hey, Josh, I love everything that you're doing here. Would love to consider you as an opportunity for House and Home. We're just doing like a small feature. And I was like, oh, okay. And at first it was just like, yeah, it's a throwaway. Like they're never going to select me. It's never going to be an opportunity for me. And then she just kept emailing me. And I was like, oh, okay, we're moving forward. This is happening. Yeah. And she's like, yeah, we'll need some photos. Like we want to fact check some of this information that we found. And I'm like, where is she finding this information? Like what? And
you're like, am I really popping like that?
I know. I was like, little old me, and I think the reason why it was so important to me was with I think I dealt with a lot coming from the previous company that I worked for in terms of just like understanding like my own identity, the value that I brought to the table, or who I was as a founder, as a CEO. You know, I never even like using that word, CEO. It's still a little weird. But it took me a while, and I think that moment was very pivotal for me because where I used to work, we would be featured quite significantly all the time inside that magazine. And I left the role, and nobody really knew what I was going to be pursuing. And so for me, at that point, it was like a hello to the world. Like, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere, and I've arrived, and I can't hide behind the company anymore. I'm the face now, and I'm the face there, right center, the bottom right-hand side of a page too as well. And it was really validating for me now being like, I just finished a year, and this is a larger organization saying, hey, we see what you're doing and this is a great job.
The stamp of approval.
And it was a stamp of approval for me. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm actually I knew that I was doing what I wanted to do. I knew that I was pursuing something that was extremely passionate to me. But it wasn't until then where it was an external person or presence or company that was telling you like, hey, like this is good, that I was like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say, I will talk about my failures all day, every day, because we don't talk about them enough. But I think sometimes, you think you put something out there and you think, yeah, people are going to buy. And I spent all of this time, and this is a little tidbit for everybody, but I spent all of this time working on a product collection, which I think is amazing still. And I spent a lot of time understanding like how I was going to put the pieces together. I spent a lot of time on what it was going to sound like, feel like, the words I was going to use, the copy I was going to say. I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like, this is amazing. The collection is called Feels Like Sunday Brunch. And I was like, yeah, this is going to be awesome. And I spent absolutely zero time marketing it to anybody. And I put an unrealistic time frame on the collection. I was like, yeah, it needs to launch like now. This is the perfect time. And absolutely, when I kid you guys, absolutely nobody bought that collection.
It flopped.
It completely flopped. I was like, and I was so shocked by it because I was like, this is so amazing. Like, it's beautiful. It's perfect. Why didn't anybody buy it? And I realized that it was like, if you're not priming your audience, right, on a certain product or piece. Well, for entrepreneurs that have products that are very launch based. If you're not timing your product, if you're not, what's the right word that I'm looking for? But if you're not clear about who your audience is, who you're connecting to, and giving people a reason to buy and a place to buy, nobody's going to buy. Absolutely no. It could be the best thing in the world. Nobody's going to buy. I realized that, and I can say, because now I can turn it around to say that I was like, okay, I'm going to reset this up, launch it better. And the second time it was successful.
Snapped.
So It's not always the idea, but it's how you're marketing it to your customer or the audience that you're looking to connect with.
Absolutely, right? You can't forget the 4 P's of marketing, and promotion
Promotion was one that I absolutely did not even consider. I was like, nobody wants a salesy person. You need sales.
You need promotion.
You need sales, 100%.
Well, Josh, this has been a great episode. It's been great chatting with you. And for those at home, thank you for tuning in to the Other Canada podcast. I'm your host, Owen Osinde, and today we were joined by Jochebed Essel, founder and CEO of Everyday Joy Studio. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.